Today I have Aras from Coronation Property with me. Aras, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, tell us a little bit about your role in particular, where you sit into Coronation Property, because I think it's very unique, the capabilities that you have in-house and the actual function that you play.
Yeah, so I'm the head of urban transformations at Coronation Property, and I come from a town planning background. So obviously that's really critical and important in the development process, and particularly at the front end, going through all the planning requirements and risks that are facing a project, and understanding how to capitalise on the opportunities that are within the planning system as well, and to optimise sites and optimise land uses.
How rare is it for a developer to have in-house planning? I mean, if I was to say the top 100 developers, what percentage of them would have an in-house planning capability versus outsource?
I think it's becoming more common, but certainly in the past it probably wasn't as common. I think developers would often lean on external consultants to fill that capability. But yeah, certainly noticing it becoming more and more common now as the planning system gets more and more complex.
And are sites getting more difficult to find, or is it just the complexity of the compliance that comes with planning?
Look, it's sort of one of those death by a thousand cuts scenarios. So sites are hard to find. Obviously, in Sydney in particular, a lot of the big type of precincts have been already swallowed up. It's getting harder and harder to put those sort of sites together, or you're amalgamating different properties to make a bigger site. But then on the other hand, you've got the complexities around the planning system, in addition to complexities with feasibility and actually, making things stack up to be able to proceed with that, making sure the planning controls are aligned with sort of what should be on the land. Obviously, a lot of councils are kind of slow to respond to the market with those types of things. So what we'll find is that often controls are a little bit outdated, and they need to be relooked at and need to be optimised based on what's sort of happening elsewhere in the city and where those controls are sitting.
Now let's talk the exciting stuff. New precincts, new projects. Sydney is changing. One of the things I love about Coronation's projects is you drive through areas that have been completely transformed. I was recently in Marylands. If you go out to Liverpool and you cross the Georges River, you see the Coronation projects there. I've driven past what you're working on in Ashbury, but the inner west, it looks like there's a fair bit of activity going on there. And what kind of projects are you guys looking to deliver in that area?
Yeah, lots going on. So we always try and focus on precinct-based projects where it's more than just one building. And that's driven by what we're trying to do from, a placemaking and activation perspective. And it's about the lifestyle proposition. So, what do the future residents and future visitors have to do within the sites? So whether that's activation through eat streets, retail, it could be anything from hotels. We're doing projects with hotels and F&B, so different types of restaurants beneath.
Yep.
And all of those services and sort of conveniences right at your doorstep. So we're always looking for the opportunity to do that ourselves and curate those people and tenants that are coming into the precinct. And that's the exciting part, because you can create something special that really does actually activate and become a catalyst for that precinct or area to change.
Because the worst thing is buying into a brand new project where the rest of it isn't done right. You can have the most beautiful apartment, but if the retail activation below is wrong, it ruins everything, right?
Oh, absolutely. You've all seen those sites where you've got a for lease sign stuck in the bottom of the retail for months and months and months on end after people have moved in.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to focus on, again, curating those uses and finding the right tenant mix for the site, the location, the project. So that can be anything from, great gym to great eateries, which are obviously, curated and different.
Yep.
And not just, multiple things that are effectively the same. Could be childcare, all of those things that you might need in your day-to-day life to make life a little bit more convenient.
Tell us about some particular areas that you're working on at the moment, if you can share, what you're comfortable sharing in terms of specific areas, localities, and projects or precincts within those areas.
Look, we're working across Sydney. So as you said, we do have those Western Sydney projects. We've just finished a large one in Marylands, right in the town centre, which is 880 apartments plus about 9,000 square metres of retail and non-residential.
Yep.
And That's almost all leased up now. So that's a combination of build to rent and build to sell. There's about half. Then we've got a number of projects that coming closer into the Sydney CBD as well. So a build to rent and mixed use project in St Peters called Precinct 75, which is a really exciting one. It's this mixed use old industrial precinct. It's already come through a bit of an evolution from that sort of hardcore industrial to more creative style uses. And now that's changing again. So, there's another layer coming in where there's going to be residential in the precinct from what we're doing, but still retaining some of that older fabric and some of those creative uses within the precinct as well. So you get that really nice mix and different activation through different times of the day. So that's a really exciting project. We'll be finished that in 2027. That'll be fully built to rent in that location. We have another project in Ashbury in the inner west. So it's one of those suburbs that a lot of people actually don't know about until you really seek it out. So it's really creatively named. It's sandwiched in between Ashfield and Canterbury. So Ashbury was the combination of both of those suburb names. But it's a really beautiful little precinct that's sort of it's secluded and peaceful, but still really close to the amenities and transport and the CBD and employment opportunities.
And Ashbury is a beautiful area. You drive around, you see old Federation houses, wide streets, great landscape in terms of trees. And as you're saying, it's kind of a missed pocket because it's sandwiched in between big thoroughfares and it's somewhat lost. What kind of product are you delivering in Ashbury and how's that different to the build-to-rent product in the apartment precincts? So
Ashbury's quite a bit different from a lot of our projects in the sense that it's fairly low rise, low scale.
Yeah.
So it's one of those sort of missing middle townhouse style opportunities that a lot of people talk about. And they don't happen a lot. There aren't a lot of those sites that give that opportunity. So it was an old industrial precinct there as well, in the middle of single low density dwellings. And somehow this tyre factory ended up there backing onto a park right in the middle of a completely suburban area. We rezoned that site. And the heights range from 2 stories up to 6 stories. So we've got a combination of terraces and also apartments on that site across both of the sides. So stage 1 will be finished and start residents moving in about a month or 2.
Okay.
And then stage 2 will be finished early next year.
If you could wave a magic wand as a planner and fix issues that are stopping growing and emerging and large developers like yourselves, what would they be? What would be on top of your wish list so that we can address housing issues, supply bottlenecks from your perspective?
Look, time is definitely the biggest one. So as the saying goes, time is money. And often we get bogged down in these approval processes and assessment timeframes, and that really kills projects because you're sitting there, you've got a lot of holding costs, obviously, with land and all the different fees and charges that come up through that process. And the longer you're sitting on that, the more that costs you.
Yep.
And it's uncertainty as well because you're never quite sure until you get that approval exactly what you're going to get out of that process. And I think anyone who's been involved in that development assessment process knows that you might, even towards the end of a DA, get areas reduced or dwellings reduced or setbacks increased and all this sort of thing that affects the feasibility of a project. So that's one thing, certainty and time. And there's a whole range of, unfortunately there's no one silver bullet, but there's a whole range of things that come into play and affect the feasibility of projects based on, it could be different regulations in different council areas, changes in regulations as you're going through the process. And again, time comes into that because the longer that assessment timeframe is, the more risk there is that there will be a regulation change that affects you. And so all of those in combination end up becoming a real issue when you try to forecast a long-term project.
Is the timing issue people doing their jobs, trying to do the right thing, scared to make mistakes? Or is it just that they've introduced so many layers that by the time it goes through everything, it just takes too long?
Look, it's a great question. It's a real combination of that. And I think, planning used to be about balancing outcomes and then making a decision and moving on. And unfortunately, you've got a lot of people now that are a little bit scared to make that decision or scared to make that mistake because perhaps they're scared of the repercussions or job security, I don't know, whatever it might be. But unfortunately, it ends up sort of stagnating and they're relying on going out to external consultants and engineers. And unfortunately, instead of sort of, again, balancing those outcomes, they'll just say, well, the engineer said this can't happen.
Risk aversion.
So it's massive risk aversion. So it's not managing risk, it's just complete risk aversion.
What have you learnt about yourself as a planning professional working inside a development team as opposed to having been previously an outside consultant? What are some of the things that have opened up your eyes to the business and delivering projects?
Yeah, really good question, actually. So, feasibility is the main one. You understanding that there's such a huge impact on whether a project can be viable or not based on what you can achieve under the planning controls.
Yep.
And in some ways, this is another thing that you'd probably change if you could wave that magic wand, right?
Yep.
Where it's understanding that you can completely overload the system by adding, fees and charges or contributions over here, regulation changes over here, and all of those things add 1%, 2% to the cost of things. And then, of course, at one point, that's just going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, and suddenly things don't work.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that now.
Yeah.
That for a number of years now, we're seeing that, particularly with the construction price increases, projects just aren't proceeding. So it's that insight into how the mechanics work behind, and unfortunately that's something that also is the least understood on the government side as well.
Yeah, one of the things we've tried to do on this podcast is kind of bring the other side to development and provide the realities, because from an external perspective, it's developers are always seen as large investors that make a lot of money, but the business of development is a very difficult and complex business, and that's the reason why we now have issues around supply. And so I want to commend you guys for doing a great job. I recently drove past Maryland's, driving through Maryland's. My wife and I stopped there to get a coffee, and we did the coffee test. Yeah. And we stopped at one of the retail precincts that is a new tenant of yours.
Great.
And had an amazing coffee on the way through. And I think that's a testament to kind of having vision and building something that was very unique for that area, and then hopefully having that translate across the rest of the portfolio. So thank you for coming today and sharing your insights to us. You've given us a great perspective as to kind of how your function works at Coronation. And I guess my last question to you is, where do you kind of see the projects and the product going over the next 10 years? What would you like to have as a vision for the type of projects that Coronation continues to deliver?
Yeah, look, we're really excited about the future for us. We've got a number of great blue chip location projects on our books, and we're very design driven as a company. So we just want to keep delivering that quality, keep delivering that activation and that placemaking element, and some amazing amenities for the residents. We're really excited about that sort of world-class amenities that we're bringing to that build-to-rent and build-to-sell product that we're delivering. And I think it's going to be a really interesting time in the next few years because, of all those things we touched on before. And, there aren't many things that can shift the dial in terms of feasibilities working other than, construction costs, ability to purchase, so borrowing costs and interest rates. And it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out and ideally frees up some supply.
And just building a better product. Right, you can't control the supply or the planning, but you can control what you deliver to market.
Absolutely.
You can make your product better and more desirable and create that competitive advantage compared to others. Last question, only because I'm interested, what kind of amenity is standing out to you more than previously, say, the past 5 or 10 years? Is it gyms? Is it food? Is it health? What are the kind of things that we might see in developments over the next 10 years?
Yeah, great question. I think health and wellness is a big one that's becoming more and more important for people. You know, increasingly time-poor lives.
Yeah.
It's something that's really useful to have either in your building or on your doorstep. So we're doing things like sauna, steam rooms, properly fitted out gyms. So
Yeah.
not just one treadmill and a bike. It's, you know, proper sort of techno gym equipment, something you might find in a gym that you pay for.
Yep.
And pools and all of those sort of things that you can have that whole ecosystem within your building.
Yep.
Rather than necessarily having to go out and source that elsewhere. So I think that health and wellness aspect is going to be really important for people in the next few years.
Awesome. Well, mate, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into your role and the function within Coronation, and we wish you guys all the best.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you.